I do like the Terminator franchise. Well, the 3 real ones. I'll admit I haven't seen the most recent entries. I'm just putting that out into the ether right away, because I'm about to say some uncharacteristically negative things about a game. Terminator Resistance, released in 2019 by Teon Studios, who you may be familiar with as the company behind RoboCop Rogue City, a game I really liked. Well, everyone kept telling me that their earlier game was just as good, so I went ahead and grabbed it for $7 on a sale, and here we are. I'm always a sucker for a mid-range movie tie-in game, and probably always will be, despite the occasional pain. Terminator Resistance is set in the future glimpsed during the first movie's intro, when Skynet is rounding up and exterminating the last pockets of humanity. We play as Jacob Rivers, a member of the Resistance Army, as he tries to contact the broader Resistance to inform them about the new infiltrator-type Arnold Schwarzenegger robots running around in the timeline. Immediately you'll notice this is a very gray game. The use of color here is frankly abysmal. The enemies, the environments, everything is washed out and drab, hard to pick apart at a glance, and blending together into a sort of ash blur. The actual design of levels is not noteworthy. If you've played any post-apocalyptic games, this will be extremely familiar and uninteresting. Generic cities, no real monuments to get your bearings, just a lot of map checking and scavenging through bombed-out warehouses. We have a set of X-ray specs that let us see through buildings to highlight enemies, which range from little spider droids to the iconic Terminators, to huge tank types and aerial hunter-killers. I kind of think they added these goggles because they realized how much the enemies blend into the backgrounds. The interesting thing to me is that this entire future setting is only shown for, maybe a couple minutes during the original movies? And in those scenes, it is very gray, lifeless, and ashen. This game's setting is extrapolated from that one brief moment, and so we end up with something that's visual striking in a small dose and frustrating when drawn out over several hours. This is the kind of ultra-muted color palette that I associate more with the fabled Xbox 360 piss filter era. We're moving through a series of battlefields, scavenging as we go, but this world really doesn't have an interesting quirk to liven it up. It's a pretty straight-faced apocalypse. No weird humor, dark horror, interesting traversal mechanics. Nothing like the anomalies of Stalker, the gas masks of Metro, the weird culture of Fallout, or the bizarre language and car focus of Mad Max. It just is a pretty generic and bland apocalypse. Speaking of which, this game does remind me of a Fallout 3 mod for some reason. It's copycatting a lot mechanically with the RPG elements, the scavenging focus, and the sloppy gunplay. So let's dig into the real issue I had with the game: mechanical misalignments. Basically, Terminator Resistance is trying to be every type of FPS RPG at once. It's got branching dialogue paths with romance options. It's got scavenging and ammo crafting. It's got a camera like BioShock did, except less useful because there's no associated reward system. There's levels and feats and sneaking and lockpicking and hacking. It's casting a wide net, and the lack of focus results in a failure to develop any given idea past its most generic form. I think it was trying to be closer to a horror survival RPG, something like BioShock or Alien Isolation, based on a few things. For starters, the humanoid Terminators are invincible to your initial weapons. You can only avoid them or try to pop off one of the thousands of explosive barrel hazards as they pass by. There's also a few sequences where you very deliberately have to sneak around them, and even when they're injured, they can simply walk up to you and hit an insta-kill animation. All leaning towards the horror, with the scavenging and crafting putting a pin in survival crafting. But that's all completely counteracted by the resource tuning. I had, quite literally, thousands of rounds of ammunition for each gun. I don't know if this is a problem with the normal difficulty specifically, but I genuinely cannot remember a shooter that gave me this much ammunition. short of any gimmicky infinite ammo weapons. There's so many bullets around that even cursory scavenging takes ammo concerns fully out of the equation. I didn't even touch the crafting system until the end of the game, and that was just to see if I could break 3,000 rounds with the plasma rifle. This is largely a problem because, for some reason, the game also gives you a massive upgradable inventory and fails to implement any sort of encumbrance system like you'd typically see in a shooter with this specific slant towards RPG. This isn't like Stalker, where you might need to lose a backup weapon to acquire something valuable. There's no decision for the player to make here. And at a certain point, scavenging feels unsatisfying because you're already swimming in resources. The world is also extremely unresponsive, like you're floating in place instead of occupying a character with their feet on the ground. There's only a handful of guns and they all feel bad. Not enough feedback, audio or otherwise, to make them feel powerful in any way. It's all blinking. Once you start finding plasma weapons, you can actually engage in shootouts with the Terminators, but that's when you realize how bad the enemy AI is. Enemies just sort of consistently march towards you as you blow them to pieces. The larger enemies have pretty severe issues tracking and engaging the player. Sometimes standing below a ledge or just off to the side of something is enough to make you completely immune to their weapons. It's really just too dumb to put up any kind of noteworthy challenge, and that drags the horror elements of the gameplay even further down. Story-wise, I'm gonna be honest, around 3 hours in I stopped caring. Sometimes a game just entirely fails to grab me, and that's the case with the story here. I skipped a lot of dialogue in this one, and that's a problem that compounds, and it's not something I normally do. So I suppose that in itself is a judgment, a Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Anyways, overall, Terminator Resistance is not a very good game. It's held back by poor gunplay, unappealing art direction, some unusual mechanical choices, and honestly, it kind of feels like they just popped random mechanics from other games into the toolbox because, hey, those other successful games had them. Like it was afraid of presenting a more focused experience out of fear it had turned some tranche of players away. On the trusty pain scale, I'd give Terminator Resistance a very painful. I suspect people who really like Terminator will still have a great time with this. Likewise, people who haven't played as many post-apocalypse FPS RPGs as me will probably think it's a pretty cool time, without realizing it's just sort of a lesser imitation of better things. But hey, I played the whole thing. It wasn't bad enough for me to give up partway through. Well, that's all for my 55th review. I'm Jotun Warrior. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, see ya.